This episode of the podcast is brought to you by the PowerTech online membership program. If you've been listening to Andy and I wondering, hey, how are they able to get all this podcast content out there? Well, that's because of our members. For just $9.99 a month, you can get access to our online video library, including hundreds of videos of Coach Andy teaching, and have the option for consultation calls with Andy or myself to go over anything you need. We can cover training, nutrition, coaching, parenting, agents, the junior college hockey path, whatever's of interest to you. You'll also be able to participate in our popular Ask Me Anything episodes, have access to special discount codes, and be given priority for any PowerTech in-person camps or events. If you like what we're doing here and you want to support us, this is the best way to do it. Visit powertechhockey.ca/memberships or find the link in the description of this video to learn more. I recorded some ads yesterday, so we don't have to say them anymore.
Oh, no shit. Oh, cool.
So I did I wrote a little script for myself.
Yep.
And then I made a graphic. So I'm going to overlay it at breaks in the podcast.
Cool. I didn't know
so
that.
now we don't have to say it anymore.
Nice.
No.
Get right to it. Huh?
Well, I don't like doing it.
Yeah,
so at least now, and I also hate hearing my own voice.
Yeah.
Don't hate it, but
yeah.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I was telling Christina yesterday, listening back to the recording, I'm like,
yeah, I do the same.
Yeah.
If I happen to click on one of our reels or whatever,
yeah. It's so much worse.
Guy.
It's so much worse scripted too. When it's scripted,
Yeah.
it's so hard. It was when I was doing it, it was making me think of when you and I used to do like the old videos back in the day. And you'd just be like snapping.
Yeah.
Okay. So I don't know. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
Not really.
Open up? Do you want any warm up? Any warm up? Jibber jabber?
No, I don't have anything today.
No.
I don't think so.
I had something in that, but then I forgot. So that's fine. So we're gonna talk about a clip. So we had another like viral clip thing that was the idea for this one, and it was kind of like your mentality if you're playing against a team that you kind of know you're gonna lose to. So
we're talking population 30,000 versus population 3 million.
Right.
Basically that.
And you could
stack teams versus your hometown.
Yeah, and you find that dynamic pretty much at every level until you get to the NHL, probably, maybe the OHL. But even in college, it's like if you're an East Coast team and you're playing in like the ECAC and you go against a Big Ten or whatever, it's like a lot of times you don't have a chance. Like if you have a Niagara University play against Boston College or whatever, the likelihood that Niagara pulls a win out, maybe not so high. At least that's how it seems, because the schools that are always ranked top 10 seem to be like Quinnipiac, Michigan. They're always the same kind of schools, North Dakota.
I think with school, like different philosophies, right? Like a school, I don't know for sure because I don't follow college hockey quite as much. But I think a team like Michigan, Wisconsin, it appears like they get really high-end younger guys that move on to the NHL. Whereas I think a team like Quinnipiac, is that how you say it?
Quinnipiac.
Yeah, Quinnipiac. Yeah. They have guys that like they're just an older team.
Yeah,
like they get 23, 24-year-olds. Is that, if that's possible, 22. Yeah. So you get the older teams, so that's their competitive advantage.
Yeah, I feel like that's
right? So the names aren't
true.
like huge.
Yeah,
necessarily. They're good players, but like so you don't get the Owen Power. You get an older, really good player. Yeah. So it's a different way of recruiting.
Yeah, but you find that dynamic at all levels basically until you get up to NHL, and then and in the CHL you could still find it too. I feel like the OHL might actually be the exception between in the CHL at least. Like in the Q, I feel like the low teams versus the high teams, there's a pretty big gap. WHL, I don't know as much, but in the OHL, it kind of seems like even on
I stick to that because I think that's what we know more.
Yeah, but I think I'll speak for the OHL, where it's like if you get a bad OHL team this year, they still could beat a top team that year, right? Whereas like in other leagues, it's not the same. Like you go to a junior B loop or a junior A loop, and the bottom team, like you're 90% sure you're losing.
Tough sledding.
Yeah, and then if you go lower than that into minor hockey, then you get in Ontario, at least, you get the Toronto versus small area team, like you're saying, and that's kind of a hard situation to deal with. So I want to start with like a little story. I've said on the I think I've said this one on the podcast before, just to kind of outline the dynamic that I'm talking about, and then I can get your comments and we can kind of go from there. So I vividly remember we played. I couldn't have been more than 14. We played uh, Honey Baked in an exhibition game preseason, and I was gonna look at this up before we started, but I forgot to. I wanted to see how many kids on that Honey Baked team went on to get drafted versus our Windsor team had 2 kids get drafted late. That was it.
In the CHL.
Yeah, for in the OHL. So, anyways, I didn't see how many of those kids, those Honey Baked kids, were ended up getting drafted or moving on to college or whatever, but they were really good.
Do you remember any names at all?
I don't. I would if I looked it up, I'd probably recognize some of them, but maybe I'll do it after just for shits. But anyways, they were a good team, really good team. And that Detroit loop that you coached in is awesome. That's your Bell Tire comp you wear, Honey Baked, Little Caesars, Victory Honda, etc. Those teams are usually pretty strong. It's an off year if they have a weak team. And so I remember going into that game as the player, it was like, we're going to get smashed. Like, that was the attitude, right? It was like, we're going to get smashed. And that wasn't wrong. It was like, that is what is going to happen. And I remember we go into the game and the game starts and we're kind of hanging in okay. And then the rails fall off and it ends up being like 8-1 or 9-1 or whatever the score was. Big spread. So we get back into the room after the game and the coach was like all mad. So I remember sitting there and I'm like, trying to be like upset and whatever, because that's the expectation when you lose a game like that. But I remember sitting in the dressing room and I'm like, is he actually mad about this? Like, I remember thinking this, like when I was 14, I was like, I'm not even really mad. I was like, I'm sitting here trying to play the part of being mad, but I knew they were going to smash us when we came here. So why is he acting like we didn't play well or we should have done better or we should have done this different or done this different when everyone in the building knows we're going to come in and get rocked. So with that in mind, I remember thinking about my coach, like, how could you be like ripping us or mad at us or cussing us out or even being disappointed? Like maybe there's a degree of disappointment for effort.
Question for you though, to interject. Your coach play ever?
No.
So
no.
that could
that I'm aware of any high level.
Okay. That could be the lack of understanding of how hard the game is when you're playing against superior talent, possibly. And I don't even mean to cut you off more, but that could be his emotions might be a reflection of just being insecure, just like so. Don't understand that you guys just didn't try hard enough, but you were just totally outmatched, and maybe he just embarrassed or didn't know what to do himself, and it was like taking out on you guys.
Yeah, and this is exactly kind of the dynamic I want to get into. So this is why I want to do this episode, because this happens a lot, and there's the flip side where if you're the really strong team, so it applies both ways. So that was kind of my starting story to like set the stage of what I'm thinking about. So I want to start kind of with getting your thoughts on how that like intimidation piece plays into the mindset of young players. And then when you're young, we'll get to the coaches kind of after, but if we stick on the player side of it, how can you get into a better mindset or go into that game or approach that situation? We could take it from the team that sucks versus the team that's good, both ways. So just like intro kind of thoughts on that from the player side.
Yeah. So I think age, I think the younger you are, the less you know. So I think I think if you're like an 8-year-old kid, like you might not know what a big center looks like, right? So if you get beat 12-0 or something like that, it's kind of like everybody's sitting there like, what happened? Or they're just so good. I don't know if you have time to prepare for anything like that. So I think being too young, there's one thing. I think you start to get to the age as maybe 10, 11, 12, like in that for sure, when you can start stacking teams or you start getting very different levels of hockey. I think kids and they've been around hockey a little bit and they know, okay, if I play these couple teams, and now they have those rankings, right? So kids and coaches actually have a clue on paper who's supposed to be good and stuff. So, but I still think when you're 8 years old, I still think those kids don't go in there saying, "Oh, we're gonna get killed," because I think they just think it's a hockey game. But I think when you get to that 10, 11, 12, then you start realize, okay, we're in one here. We better be ready, or you have an attitude. So, anyways, the intimidation is the question. So that feeling of intimidation. Yeah, I think once you're aware, it could be just the rankings itself going, oh, we're playing number one. So that's why you kind of don't want to look at them as a player, but it's almost impossible not to. So the rankings, it's like, oh, we're playing number two or number three, and we're 37. Like that tells me that
And
we're
kids say that all the time. They
yeah,
know who's where.
yeah. It's a different world than it used
Yeah,
to
for
be, right?
sure.
Where they're from. So like again, we go, almost if you have the title, Toronto Marlies, Detroit Honey Baked. Oh God, this is a tough one. If you're coming from like a smaller center where it's like you got one AAA team and you get 30 guys at tryout and you got 15 guys, you know what I mean? Then there's the hype. People talk about how good these teams are. Maybe there's a big name on that team that you've heard about that everyone talks about, and for sure it can be real. Like it for sure could be like um, at a certain age, anyways, where you sit there and you go, "Oh my God, this is going to be hard," or you just overthink it. Like we always talk about is you put pressure on yourself because you overthink that game, right? And we've all done it, right? We think if it's a championship game as a kid, as a coach, as a parent, even a lot of times you build that up like, oh, this is a big game. You got to be going, and it's like all of a sudden this game that's just a hockey game. I mean, it's a championship game or it's a big game, but in reality, they all are. And they should be all treated somewhat the same because you start taking different approaches or you look at it in a different way, then you're probably going to have, you're going to be tense or you're going to be too hyped up or whatever, right? So I think that's the biggest thing when you're playing these games is that you can make it bigger than actually what it is. And then when you do that, it creates, maybe some tension or over hype where or and it's just the fear of the unknown, right? The fear of the unknown is real, right? Right. So you think about things that may never happen or whatever. You put pictures in your head or project something that may not be real at all.
Mm-hmm. So when you were as as dad, like we're sticking to the player side, but as dad, like did you ever have those situations? Like I know you had when you were coaching Bell Tire, you guys were the super team, but maybe if you go younger age when you were just playing dad with Chooch's AAA team before they were good, because I know when they got a little bit older they were good. But let's say when he was that 12, 13, where they were still like a lower team, what was the if did you have conversations about that kind of game, or what was the mindset, or was it something that you just had baked in right away, or what was the focus going into that game where it's like, okay, we're playing the junior Canadians or we're playing the Marlies or we're playing the Chicago Mission or whichever team, fill in the blank. What was that? What did you or what would you focus on? Like, how would you frame your mindset for the player going into that kind of
So you're talking
situation?
as the dad?
Well, if you want to answer it as the player, yes, but even as the dad, like, because if the dad is the one or the mom is the one helping to set the player's mindset going into that game, where like you're gonna go play Elgin Middlesex and get smashed.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
like,
the big one that I remember with my kid was in minor bantam. I think yeah, minor bantam or yeah. So U13, U14 is their first really big one was Chicago Mission, and they were the talk. Like everybody talked about how great they were and stuff like that. So I told my son, I said, "You guys are playing a really good team today. So, but you guys have some players and you guys can probably hang in there with them. You just got to have an A game." So that's all I really said to him. But as a player goes, when you're looking at these things, I mean, you this is where parents and coaches could be good is give them a little bit of guidance of like you never you could anybody can win any game, and but you just have to have you got to be on. You have to be willing to work. You have to be willing to do the little things. Like you have to be on because they can expose you very quickly. And that's actually what happened. It was a really tight game until the last couple minutes. And it was like bang bang, and then up 3-1 or 4-1. And just because they had those extra guys that can do extra things and matched up against the wrong guys or whatever. But the thing is like it's youth hockey and you know I'm always big on making the game just a game. Like it doesn't matter who you're playing. Because I just see it in the OHL all the time, right? Like you said earlier, you get a team that is a last place team playing a good team, and all of a sudden you go, oh, they won last night. It's like you can win every night, any night, depending on how you play. So I think when you're talking to your kids and you're in for a game, I think it's not overwhelming them with um, how good the other team is, and not pretending that you're so good either. It's focusing on your details and focusing. Having a plan would work too, but focusing on your details and understanding that, like, it's okay to say that we're playing a very good team, but it's also, I believe in you guys to, as a parent, as a kid, I believe in you guys that you can hang in there. You can, it's going to be a great game, and as long as we do A, B, C, D. So maybe the focus is on what that other team's strength may be and how you negate that, and what our strengths can be to negate that. So um, typically, if you're playing a big center, you're going to have not a big centerman, but uh, a team from a big center. That team probably has a lot more firepower. It might be, instead of having one or two goal scorers, there might be 8 guys that can put the puck in the net. Instead of having one guy that can skate real well, there might be, or two, 3 guys that skate real well. Might have a whole team that does. You might have instead of a couple guys that can really make nice plays, you might have 2 lines or 3 lines that do, right. So that's what you're up against. So I think for the most part, going in there 9 times out of 10 or 10 times out of 10 probably, is that if you go there and try to go in a track meet with them, that's not a good plan. So it's going in there and putting a lot of pride in all those little things that we talk about all the time, is the blocking shots, the winning faceoffs, taking care of the middle of the ice, frustrating the other team, doing all the things that get them off their game if you can. And if you can get the other team off their game, maybe that's the key to frustrating them, right? If you frustrate them, maybe that gets them away from their team. Because I know this for a fact of coaching, being on both sides, as a player, as a coach, as a as whatever, being on both sides, is when you play a team that you're supposed to be better than and they're frustrating you, it's really, really frustrating. And guys can have attitudes because a lot of times on the better teams, they don't think it's not supposed to happen. So it's supposed to be easy. And if you're in their face and you're not getting the opportunities, or you're getting denied, or you're getting just roughed up a little bit, it can change the attitude of a team real, like, big time. That doesn't mean that you're going to win. It doesn't mean that you're not either. But maybe that expected, 6-0 win is a 3-2 game or a 2-1 game or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting because that kids will say that they'll be like, "Oh, we played the junior Canadians, but it was only 2-1, or it was only 3-2, or whatever the score was, where they played better than you might think." And
Yeah,
kids take
because they
pride
might
in
look
that.
at the other team that was better than them and they lost 5-0
Yes.
or 8-0, right?
Yeah, because exactly. You'll be like, "Oh yeah, they beat Sun County 5-0, but they only beat us 2-1 or whatever." And kids will say that they'll take pride in keeping the game close because they know that they're maybe outclassed a bit. But I love what you said about kind of going into it with a plan, because to me, I think for those games, instead of going in thinking we're going to beat these guys or we're going to lose, I would just like take that mindset. It's always going to be there to some degree, but don't make that the focus. Instead, focus on your plan. Like, what can you do to make this a better game? So maybe it's I'm gonna shut down this guy, or I'm gonna be in this guy's face, and that's the focus. It's not the outcome, right? Now we're back to, we've talked about that so many times before, is like focusing on processes, not outcomes. So going into that game, instead of, man, I remember so many times sitting in the car going up the 401, we're driving to London, or we're going to the Marlies tournament, or we're going wherever, and I'm just like, I know we're gonna get smashed every game, and there was no one to tell me because our coaching was terrible. There was no one to tell us like, hey, that's not what we're going to focus on, because I don't like the fake thing either. I don't like the, no guys, we can beat them, and like I don't think that should be the message either, because maybe you can, but maybe that's not what we focus on, because now all of the kids on your team know that the likelihood of us winning is not very good. So instead of that, how about we focus on some of those other things? And one thing too, I was going to say is that with a lot of those good teams, especially when you're younger, if they're very, very offensive, then they won't focus as much on those little things that can be frustrating. So, for example, if you have, like you said, 8 goal scorers on the team, what are they going to focus on playing a weaker team? They're going to be trying to run the score up, getting their goals as a better team. They might not be focused on winning faceoffs, or maybe they're blowing the zone quick because they want to have point night or whatever. And if you can start to key in on some of those things that maybe that team is missing, then that's where maybe you can have some success. And as an individual, like, it's hard when you are on a bad team because not everyone is going to be of the same mindset, and that's where kind of the coaching thing comes in. But you can't control what other people are doing. So at least for you, with your mindset, if you can go in and just have a plan on how you can have a good game against this team, that's a much, much better focus to me than thinking we can beat these guys, or thinking we're going to get smashed by these guys either way. Like I said, you're not going to fully get rid of that. It's always going to be kind of there, but don't have that as your number one thing you're thinking of for that game. Think about how you can be effective steal the spotlight from some of these guys, those types of things that we've talked about in a couple of the past episodes, right?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, so it's just it's interesting how you can go about that. Like if you, the bottom line is if you can. So when I said about not making the game too big, how do you do that, right? And that's like what we always talk about is focus on the moment, right? So if you think too far in the future, or you even think about maybe a past game that you had against them, if you think about either one too much, then you're creating a false illusion, right? You're if you go with a past and 8-0 loss, let's say, and you say, well, that's how they played, and you know, and you focus on how good they were and how good you weren't, or whatever, then that's what's in your mind, and you're creating something that's in the past, nothing you can do about it. And then if you project like, okay, like they're probably gonna beat us again, this is a huge game, then you're creating anxiety for nothing, because like we say all the time, like, or what I say a lot is when you worry or you fear something, you know, in the future, 90% of the times it doesn't even happen, and when it does, it's not as bad as you thought it could be, or it would be. So that's why it's really important as coaches and as players to learn the art of just doing your job, like doing your job, being in the team's job, but doing your job like one step at a time, like not too far ahead. So it's your preparation. It's so if you practice, let's just talk it individually, right? If you eat right and you sleep right and you prepare the way you always prepare, and you go out there and concentrate, like when I go out on my shift, I'm going to do my 3 things or 4 things the best that I can. I'm going to help my team win and be competitive. And if that's all you ever focus on, then you're going to probably have some sort of success, right? If you try to eat an elephant all in one bite, it's not going to happen, right? So like so as a coach, and as well, let's say you leave it as a coach, if you can learn to instill that in your players early, not to focus too much in the future, not to focus too much in the past, but let's just do what we can do right now. And when you're playing a big team or a good team, that's all you really can do is focus on this shift, right? You prepare for the game, practice plans, what's the objective, how are we going to play, and then shift by shift, that's all you can do. And you know what? If you go 15 shifts as a team and it's a tight game, you're doing pretty good. Now, don't get too excited and say we're gonna just. You just have to continue going shift after shift after shift, and basically going back to that first example I used when Charlie's team played Chicago. That's kind of what they did, and then it was like in a 2-minute span, it was like 3-1. It's like maybe they lost focus or maybe they just got overpowered, but at the end of the day, it was a pretty good game.
Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit about. I was just thinking of this while you were talking. Is the balance of like being competitive versus being realistic. Maybe realistic isn't the right word, but what I'm thinking of is, again, I remember because just so if anyone doesn't know, playing AAA growing up, my team was about as bad as it could be. We had horrible coaching every year. Our team was not very good. We had 2 or 3 players that were okay up until I was maybe 15. So I'm talking 8-1, 10-2, 13-1 every single game against other bad teams. We were horrible. And I remember coming home from some of these games, and I don't fault my dad because he didn't play. He didn't really know the dynamic, whatever. But other parents as well. Like we would always carpool up with somebody. And I remember coming home and my dad and whoever the other dad was that we went for that weekend with, me and buddy in the back seat would be like, game's over. We're on our way home now. Like we're having fun, like goofing around in the back seat. And it happened countless times where my dad and other dad would be like, aren't you guys like embarrassed? Like, aren't you guys upset that you just lost and lost like that? Like, doesn't that matter to you guys? And I remember sitting like, same thing, just like my coach that game against Honeybake. I remember sitting in the back seat and I'm just like, what do you want us to do? Number one, it's over. Number one. And then number two, it's like, they're better than us. Like, they're faster, they're stronger, they're better coached.
And I was just gonna say that you didn't have an adult coach kind of steer the ship. It was just like, go work hard.
No, and so like we'd be sitting in the back seat and I'd be like made to feel bad because I'm not like mad enough about losing, And so I want to talk a little bit about like what are your thoughts about kind of that situation is like how long, like if I don't know if this makes sense as a question, but like how long should you be upset for? How upset should you be? Like what's the level of emotion? what's the difference between that and actually being competitive, vice whatever? Because a lot of times you can mask like the emotion of being upset as like, well, I'm just so competitive, I just hate losing, and that kind of thing. So there's a question in there somewhere, but like, what do you think about that kind of setup for the kids when it is that situation?
Yeah, it's that situation's so different. It's it's you you know like you because right? You know that you're not a good team, you're not well coached. Like, and everyone can pretend and say, well, that's a bad attitude, but it's like you just know you're being, like you said, you're being realistic. And I think that, this is very true, is that winning breeds winning and losing breeds losing. So you learn how to lose. And, yeah, anything you do, if you have, like, I always say this, right? Like, someone that has, you might like steak and lobster, surf and turf, we'll call it, another, to coin a phrase. You might like it, and it's maybe it's your favorite meal ever. It's probably good once a month, or something along those lines. But you have steak and lobster every day, then it's just steak and lobster. It's just no different than a peanut butter sandwich, right? It's like it's just another meal. The point of that, I hope that makes sense, is that if you lose all the time, then you kind of get used to, like, it's just losing. That's what we do. And you maybe even look individually, like, I just hope I play okay, right? Like, you do lose focus unless you have someone really steering a ship, being really a real leader, right? But the same goes for winning, right? Like, if you got a winning team that, um, let's say you're a top team and you play your team, and it's a 3-1 game, 3-2 game, you keep them close. It's like it's just another win, and it's like they're actually pissed about the win because it wasn't a big enough win, right? So you just expect to win, and it's like it's not the thrill of victory anymore. And that's the difference, I think, in youth hockey, when you have a super team, as opposed to, like, in the direct opposite, is like you just know you're not very good, or you're the best and you shouldn't even have to try, and you guys are shit and I shouldn't even be playing you guys.
Yeah. So I was just talking to a dad the other day, and his kid plays in that Toronto loop, and one of the teams is supposed to be like the number one in Ontario, and they lost a game, one game. They lost one game, and it was like, sell the farm. Like, we need a new team. We got to start recruiting for next year. We got to change things up, whatever. And exactly along the lines we're saying, it's like sometimes they're just kids. They're gonna have a bad game. Like, that can happen. They can lose. Sometimes the worst team beats the better team, and that happens. It's not the end of the world, but it goes both ways, to your point about losing and winning. It's like, if you're constantly used to winning, you win every game all the time, and then all of a sudden you lose a game. It's like, well, even as the parents, you can get sucked into that. Like, I remember you telling me with your super team in Belltire, like, sometimes the parents would be like, well, we gotta start winning games. It's like,
Okay, so as you were saying that, it just reminded me real quick. It's really hard, and this will go both ways. It's really hard to drill in their head that they have to work, and they have to have good habits, and they have to come to play every game, and that you can't just turn it on because you're good for the last third period, and you have to have good habits because you never know who's going to come. Because they really, many games we'd be, we'd drop the puck, go in their zone. Our goalie would do the Ken Dryden holding the stick, basically, and maybe they would get a shot on our net, maybe, but we were in there buzzing, get a line change, still have pressure, and just buzzing. We might get 12 shots in the first 5 minutes, right, or more, and then we'd start to score, and then the wheels would come off for the other team. Typically, that would be what happened. So it was really hard to say that you have to have all these different habits, because, no, what are you talking about, coach? We win. But then, so that's that. So we were playing Victory Honda. So this is, we were having a, not, I wouldn't, maybe a little bit of a lull. I think the kids were feeling a little bit. Every team does it, so it's not the end of the world, and people have to recognize that. So we had in November, we tied Victory Honda, which kind of, and we were playing like a little bit sloppy for a couple games. And a couple of the parents were just, mean mugging all the time. They're losing. You can't tie. Like, I think it was Columbus one time. They played hard, man. And our guys were just, maybe I think our guys played hard. We just didn't bury, but we got outworked. We actually got outworked by this Columbus team that had no business um, competing with us, honestly. And, like, the parents were all upset, like, what's going on here? And then we tied Victory Honda, and then I think we beat them just by anyways, we're in that lull. And no one would give credit to the Victory Honda. But they had Alex DeBrinker. Remember, I told you about that. He was a very good player that worked hard, and they had a hardworking team. And when that saying that um, talent beats hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. That's what it was. So it happens, and it can happen, and it's like very, very important to learn that you have to play a hard game every time, every time. And I saw that with my super team doing that when they chose to take time off or take shifts off or create bad habits or get selfish or not understand that hockey is a game that you could lose any night if you're even if you are prepared, right? And then on the opposite side is that you can win any night if you actually work hard. You can catch someone on a bad game, and those are things you're maybe hoping for a little bit of luck, but if you work hard and have a way to play, you have an opportunity to win.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of I wanted to leave a bit of a take home message for the parents because on either end, like if and it's not just if you've never played, but it, like the role of attitude is really important and actually understanding the situation. So me thinking flashing back to all those games we lost and all those car rides home where it's like we're just getting grilled on the way home about how much we suck. Where it's like we know we suck. All we do is lose. It's like you don't need to tell me. Like I know, and it starts to feel like not worth the effort because it's like it doesn't matter what I do. We're gonna lose. That's just what we do. We lose. And then the flip side for the winners, it's the same thing. So if you're the parents, particularly on the losing side, because it's harder to deal with losing than winning, obviously, but keeping things in perspective on the losing end and understanding kind of where the team is at and not being unrealistic because that's like the kid's just gonna shut his ears off, man. It's like the kids aren't stupid, they don't have knowledge about a lot of things and they're inexperienced, but they're not stupid. It's like if they've lost 15 games, if they're 1-15, it's like they know they're not very good. So you can't act like, well, you guys don't try or you guys are you should be playing better than you're playing. It's like actually probably not. It's like actually they're just not very good. So let's find a way to parent or guide around that situation in a way that makes sense. And that's where we get back to like we're not focusing on outcomes, we're focusing on process. Flip side, if you are a parent and your kid plays on one of these big Toronto teams or your kid is playing in Detroit or wherever in Minnesota and they're one of the best high school teams in the world or whatever, it's like they're going to have a bad game. They're going to have a bad stretch. They're going to have whatever. And you can talk to any player, any parent. At some point during the year, they'll feel like things aren't going very well. It doesn't matter if they're on the best team ever. So being able to have some perspective and understanding like this is like the cycle of how things go. This is where our team's at. We're still a really good team. We're allowed to lose a game. Sometimes the other team's going to have a good game. That's going to happen. And then if you're the losers, it's like our team's just not good, man. And we have to deal with this. These are the cards. And let's figure out a way that we can actually still have a successful year. We're going to change our definition to not be winning as success, but how can we have a good game against a better team? How can we have a good game or whatever? You know what I mean?
That's a good point. We just said is change your definition of what success is, right? Winning the championship doesn't necessarily mean success, especially if you're just really good and you didn't really have to put the effort
absolutely, man. If you didn't have
right?
to work for it and you just won the championship, you were just good. That doesn't mean you deserve or you earned anything or had a successful year.
Yeah.
You know?
It could mean that, but it could also mean that you're just a better team, and it's and the challenge wasn't that hard. But then as a team that's not successful, like that's not winning games, it's like defining winning a tournament and stuff is not necessarily that. It should be, well, I'm not saying should be, but what it could be is more just learning how to compete, like just learning how to get better. Like, so if I'm a dad in that situation for my young kid, that this is real, right? They're gonna come home and they're gonna be like, whatever, your attitude that you have, we're just gonna lose. And it's like really important that you instill that the winning attitude. It's like, how do you solve a problem, right? So you can't be the coach of the team and solve everybody's problem, but you can help your son solve theirs, right? And this is why, and I know a lot of people don't even really understand this, but this is why it's really important that kids have that measuring stick for themselves on what they consider a good game, right? You can call it, one could be effort, and we know what that, you can see effort, right? But sometimes effort just isn't enough, right? But if you see effort, that's number one. And there's a lot to learn in that, right? When you're playing on a team where you're probably gonna. It's like a fighter, right? If you go and fight John Jones in the UFC, there's a really good chance that you're going to lose. And it's the guy that, right?
Yeah.
Right. No, but I mean, they're talking the best guys.
Yeah.
There's a good chance. There's at some point he's going to just take over. So do you go into that fight just when it gets hard quitting? The real fighters come out by keep going through it, keep fighting through it, finding a way to hang in there, and maybe get to a decision or the fifth round. Like that's kind of a win, right? Because this guy is so dominant. Or it was like Nurmagomedov. I can't say it right now.
Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, Nurmagomedov. I
Khabib.
mean, he just won. Khabib. Yeah, he just won. It's like you going in there in the ring is a win already, and I'm not because that like he beats people down, and to hang in there and not tap or not, after you take 30 punches in the head, still fighting the fight. That's the lesson of a hockey player too that loses games. So it's like staying in the fight for the 60 minutes. It's stayed in the fight shift after shift. You get scored on, it's not like okay, it's over. You're still gonna go back and you're gonna play as hard as you can, right? So, anyways, the effort is huge, and you can learn a lot from that from being losing. It's effort even when it's hard or impossible, right? Because that could flip. And then the next thing that what I was saying about the parents sometimes and coaches maybe don't understand what I'm saying about this. And I'm not saying it's easy to do, but you have to find a couple of habits that you can measure that you had a good game. So, a lot of people, like I say, they'll say, well, did you score? Well, you can't use that necessarily as a tool to say that you had a good game. It could be a result of doing good things. But if you're playing on a team that you lose 9-1, 8-1, 6-0, like you guys don't score. So scoring a goal it's just a bonus. So what parts of your game can you say that equaled a good shift, right? So like, but now think about this, right? So if you're losing 8-1, 9-1 every game, 6-1, whatever, every game, then I would assume most of your game is in your defensive zone. So is that good or bad? Well, it's not fun, but it can be. But there's a tool like if I work and learn how to work my D zone at this point, and I only get better at it, and I work really hard, and I learn how the positioning, and I get my stick on things. That's only going to help me if I do play on a good team, or if I do get drafted, or I do play in a system. This is something that most people don't get taught or learn because everything's about the other end of the ice, right? So, anyways, my point is like you have to try to find a 3 to 5 things, but like keep it simple. A few things that you can say, okay, even though we were in our zone the whole time, what did I do well? Did I battle for pucks? Did I win some battles? Did I get it out? Did I have a stick on puck? Did I finish a check? Did I get scored on? All those different things. Those are successes, right? So it's like different measurements, and it's not always winning 8-1 or 3-2. It could be your individual stuff. So as a parent, you want to teach. I would say you want to teach your kid as best you can the competitiveness and not to quit, and to find a couple things that you could say, okay, that was success, and then hopefully the coach, which that's in someone else's hands because you can't coach 15 people. It's your own kid. Hopefully the coach has somewhat of a plan or a structure that can help the kids through that, right? But that's wishful thinking a lot of the times.
Well, I think you're kind of talking about zooming out like more big picture, which is good because a lot of times if you have the goal of playing higher level hockey, which is typically who the player is that we're talking to, then if you're on that team, that can be super discouraging, because not only can you feel like, oh, no one's going to see us because we suck, you might feel like you're no good either because, like you said, you're not getting a goal or whatever. But if you can zoom out and think like, okay, what are we trying to do? Like, what am I trying to be? I'm trying to be a player. I'm trying to be somebody that other teams want. And there's a lot of ways that you can do that. Go ahead.
So just the real story. One of my friends that scouts, really good friend of mine, scouts for the Anaheim Ducks. So his son was a 93. Yep, 93. And the Windsor team was not good at all.
Like AAA team?
Yeah, not good at all. So this team, I don't want to say where he's from. I want to leave his name out of it. So they would play these guys, and the one day he told me, he goes, he named the kid's name. He goes, I'd take that kid on my team any day.
Really?
He goes, that guy competes.
From the Windsor team?
Yep. And so that's a team that used to get blown out.
Yeah.
And he said, that kid works hard. He went through all the things. Because I'd take him on this team any day, and he'd be a good player. Wow. So people notice.
For sure.
People notice.
And that's kind of what I'm pointing at. And even if your goal is not to play higher, like what if it's just to have fun? It's like it's not fun when you're just getting buried and losing every game. So like find a way to find fun in it. Like how can we gamify it, make it fun? Find other ways to make it fun, because the normal fun way of like going to score a goal, whatever, obviously those are the highlight moments. But if you guys are always getting buried, it's like you have to be able to find ways to still enjoy the game and enjoy what you're doing. So even just from the fun perspective, that's important. But I wanna bounce back to the like being upset thing again for a second, because I was just having this conversation yesterday with a bunch of the academy kids that I was talking to, and how like little things set them off, where it's like the baby shit. It's like the getting like being a little baby about something, and it's not just like the younger kids; it's the older kids too. It's like, and there's a lack of resilience that uh, a lot of these kids have, which is unfortunate, and trying to instill in them, like, this is maybe another thing for parents or for a coach, whatever, is trying to instill that ability to bounce back from things. And I remember having a hard time understanding, okay, am I supposed to be upset about this, or am I supposed to brush it off and move forward now? So to me, like, I don't necessarily have like a right or wrong answer, because I think the answer is that people deal with things differently. And just because a kid comes out after a game where they got, or if they had a really poor game just individually, if they come out and they're not like super upset about it, that's not necessarily a bad thing. And if they come out and they're almost in tears about their bad game, that's not necessarily a good thing. Like that doesn't mean that they're,
Yeah, that could be just a lot of drama.
yeah, exactly, right? So my I guess my point is just keeping in mind in that situation, if you're a kid that's losing or winning or whatever, kids handle things differently, and as long as they have some awareness about the good and the bad, or where there could be improvement versus not, then I don't necessarily think the how they are emotional about it, like what their emotions are, I don't think is that important necessarily, because kids deal with things in different ways. And especially for me now, like I'm a pretty, would it be unemotional person?
Yeah,
Unemotional, is that a word?
yeah. I would
Is
say
it?
you're on the right track.
Yeah. And I'm actually just not that competitive anymore. So when we're like playing games and doing things, I just don't care that much if I lose,
Yeah,
because
you're
it's
just
not,
playing a game.
yeah, it's not important to me. If I'm doing something that's important and it doesn't go well, then I might get upset. But if I'm playing a board game, I'm not like mad if I lose. If I'm playing, oh, if we're on the ice playing 3-on-3 and I lose, like I don't care, you know. So, and that doesn't mean that like I'm wrong for not caring or whatever, because
You're
I'm
not
not upset
competitive. You're
about
a
it.
loser.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Loser
Yeah,
attitude.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And that's kind of what I think can be projected onto people if they're not like mad and upset and emotional about whatever the negative situation is. It's that loser, like, oh, you're just fine with losing then. Like,
Yeah, but like this. I think this makes sense. Is like when you get at the highest competitive levels, there's a more. You're probably going to find more people that are actually really, truly upset or pissed at their performance, the team's performance, at someone else for not doing their job. And it's like probably, I don't want to generalize. It's probably that's why they're at the highest levels, because they compete so hard. Everything matters. Whereas you get at the lower levels, it's like some guys might be just playing for fun, like you said, or they're happy to play at the AAA level and they want to win and stuff. But it's like not the end of the world. And I'm not going to go block a shot with my face. Like that's not. I like to play, but I'm not doing that, guys. Whereas if you get the highest levels, that's where you're going to get that. Like you can look across the room and say that guy just blocked 2 shots. His wrist is swollen, can't even squeeze his hands, and you're sitting here don't want to back check hard, or you're complaining about not getting a pass or something like that, or whatever. Like at the higher levels, it really probably means there's more guys that are on that thing that have true genuine feelings. Whereas when you're playing at the youth level, you might not even know what that means yet. Like what does truly competing mean? Like and yeah, and I don't know if you can teach someone to have that, and I don't know if it's necessarily healthy or not. People feel what they feel. What I would say is like I think anything you do in life, I think if you know what your effort level was, right? You know what your give a shit meter was. So like if you just change the channel to not being a hockey player and you're in whatever something else at school and you just didn't prepare or you didn't try your best and you got maybe embarrassed, then you should be upset with yourself, right? You should be. Um, but if you're not, like, I mean, I don't know if but you're aware anyways. So some people, when they compete hard. It's hockey. They lost the game, but it's like you have to be able. My point to that is you have to be able to look inside and say if you're upset because of a loss, fine. If you're upset because you didn't do your best or you didn't put the effort in, then you should be upset with yourself a little bit. And but if you look and you truly did your best, I like to say 100%. I don't know if anybody can do 100%, 100% of the time. But if you could sit there and you say, I left it all out there, and you're upset because I did all that work and I got nothing for it. That's a true emotion, and I like that.
And I don't, just to be clear, this is just my opinion, like personally, I'm not saying it's good to be emotional or not. Like, I don't care. My point is that the emotions do not always indicate the competitive nature. Like your actions doing the task that you're supposed to do. Like if you go and have a shit game, you didn't back check, you didn't compete, you didn't do all the battles, and then you come in and you smash your stick and knock the water bottles off the table and you're crying about it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, that's not.
And you see that.
Yeah, right.
You see that. There's a lot of those kids that they're just so upset they just want to win. It's like, yeah, but you didn't really actually compete. You were just out there floating around.
Exactly. And then you get the flip side where it's
Yeah.
like maybe you get the guy that battled super hard, was doing all the right things, and then he comes off after the loss and like he just sits in a stone. He's just like mug face, but he's not yelling and screaming, he's not throwing stuff, he's not, and it's a little bit harder to tell that that guy's upset. All my point is like either way, I'm not saying one is right or wrong. It's just the emotion is not always, doesn't always correlate or indicate the level of competitiveness of the person. So if you're going to be upset about something, like this is me just thinking about those car rides home where as a 13, 14-year-old, I'm not like visibly just distraught over our performance. And the dads in the front seat are just like, what's wrong with you guys? And it's like, well, nothing's wrong with me. It's like, what do you want me to do? Like, I don't know, and that doesn't mean I don't care. It doesn't mean that, but just people handle things differently. You know what I mean?
It's funny
So,
when I always say this though, like it's funny when adults project that. Not every adult, like I'm just in general though, right? It's always like, let's just say my dad was like that. Like you should be upset, this, that, and the other thing. It's like if you could just turn it around just a little bit and say, so when you went to work today and you found ways to hide and you're trying, you're looking at easy ways out and stuff like that. Is that the same thing? Should you be upset with yourself, but you can't, right? but it's reality. Like this is what I would say to parents. Like I'm very careful with my son too to not over um, what's the word, put expectations on him that I would not be willing to do. In fact, I really respect the fact of some of the things that he does, or all my kids. Some of the things that they are willing to do that or not, I'm saying maybe, but maybe willing to do, or I wasn't willing to do. Right? There's a lot of things that they do that I don't want to do that. And I wasn't willing to. They're better than me. I look at my son, like some of the things that he's willing to do and deal with, like as a man, emotionally, all these different things. If I step back, I go, I've said this to him. I say, you're a better man than I am. You're a better person than me. You are more than I ever was. That's a pretty big thing to say. Instead of, you should do more, right? Because he could, if they really want to turn that table and just start digging, probably could make me feel pretty small if he wanted to,
yeah.
right?
To finish up, I want to talk about like the coaching side of that situation. So, maybe as the coach, because you've been in like on both sides of that, like you said before, how do you approach that game? How do you approach that game for your team? What's the message? How do you prepare for it? If it's that total mismatch where you're just going against a powerhouse.
Yeah. Well, either way, the job of a coach is this is where I'm a little bit hard on coaches, or maybe I'm not, but I don't think you should coach if you don't want to prepare. And if you don't want to give your kids a plan and you want to be there for them and help them succeed, I don't think you should coach. And there's a lot of people that do that. And then there's a lot of people that are really good planners and care a lot and maybe even over detailed. But nonetheless, if you're coaching and you don't have your kids on a plan, then like what do you expect? Right? Because then you're just barking out things, work harder. That's not a thing. It's actually not a thing unless there's some structure towards that work. So a plan, one way or the other. So I've got a super good team that you should win every night. The plan is, okay, we have our game plan, and always have the expectations. Like if you're a super team, that you're going to get one or two things from the other team: a team that's already defeated, or a team that's going to give you their like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
100%.
Absolutely.
They're going to give you everything. So be ready for both. So you don't want to get ready for both mid game,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You want to be prepared. So the structure and the lesson every day is, like I said earlier about my team, is that you have to be the best, but also the hardest working. You have to have habits um, that are going to be successful. Like that's your back checking all the little things, not taking shortcuts, because one day you're going to meet your match, and it could be today, right? So, and then never minimizing an opponent, because I know some people will look and say, well, yeah, but you're not going to beat these guys or whatever. But someone can beat you, and it could shock you. Happens all the time. San Jose Sharks this year are supposed to be the worst team, and possibly one of the worst teams in the history of hockey, as they were talking like early in the season. They're winning games, and they're beating some good teams. So you don't know who you're dealing with, and whatever, right? Or catch them on a bad day. So, anyways, that would be that for a good team. But it's the same thing for a poor team. It's like help them prepare. Help them prepare. So you have now if you have, it depends kind of what level, but I think you should still actually take that back. You should help your team be a good team. But if you're a poor team, like if you're trying to run systems or run a run and gun track meet trying to score goals, then you're setting the kids up for failure, right? Because you're playing guys that are just superior. They'll steal pucks, move the puck 20 times, and put it in the back of the net. So you probably want to be more defensive, hardworking team. Period, and you make habits that are like that. So when you go against a team that is really good, you're not sitting there saying that we're going to lose. Like this, try hard. You go, you walk into that team and you prepare for it, and as you talk to them, it's like, um, don't make it too big. Just make it a game. But you let them know, like, okay, we got a game coming up this week. It's a good team. We can compete. How? Here's the key though. How? Because it's easy to say we can do it. Work hard. You have to give them a couple things that make them realize, oh yeah, maybe we can. Right. So I did that with one of my teams. It was really funny how this worked with when my kid was a little guy. We're playing a Burlington for the championship, the Ontario Championship, or was getting to the Ontario Championship. We're a little farmer town, Essex. So and it was not their top team, obviously, because it's a metropolitan, not a metro, it's a city. It was their B team, so it was like kind of the same level. But the name Burlington was, everybody in Ontario knows where Burlington is. No one knows where Essex is. So ironically, the refs didn't show up on time, and the kids were kind of getting antsy and stuff. So I what I did with them is I said, do you know? So I put a Dave. I told them a story of David and Goliath, right? And they're like, okay, cool. But I said, why? But why did David win this fight? And they go, so I showed them all the reasons, right? So I said, when we play these guys, we're the David, these are the Goliath. Why can we beat them? So I said, you guys tell me a reason why we should beat them. So they just started. We got a good goalie. I said, there we go. I wrote out with a white marker on the wall, good goalie. Oh, because this guy has a great shot. Yeah. Oh, because we know how to block shots. Yeah. So we wrote about 50 things on there. So I said, done. Just go do it. Right. So that's something you could do with your team, not write on the walls, but like have them know what they're good at. Right. Have them know their strengths. So we could be playing the Toronto this or the Detroit this. Okay, we're playing these guys, and they're a good team. But like, look, guys, this is why we can beat them, because we can win faceoffs. We can do that. We can tie guys up. We can take the middle of the ice away from them. We can chip bucks out. We can frustrate them. We can get on them. You know that Eric guy on that team? He likes to skate around and all that stuff. You know what, Andy? If you just stay on him and give him a little shot here and there, he's gonna get frustrated. Maybe he'll take a penalty. Maybe they're in the penalty box, and you give them reasons to believe that they can win. Not that you hope that we hang in there. Give them reasons to believe. And then you know what? If it's 5-0 in the first 5 minutes, it's like you just stick with it. But if it's 0-0 going into the first, or 1-0, or you're up or something like that, they're believing in their reason, and they're believing in themselves. And the wheels can come off at the end of that, and maybe you might win or whatever. But you could reward them for that, right? You could actually point out this is what you did well, right?
Yeah, I think that's huge. The biggest thing, man, from the coaching side is just actually having a plan. I cannot tell you, like, for all the coaches that listen and even the parents that listen, and I'm sure parents would agree with this anyways, because a lot of parents think their coach is an idiot anyways, but there's so many coaches when I talk to players that their coach is not teaching them any kind of structure of how to play the game. So they do, like, at practice, it's like always flow drills, right? Or it's always their battle drills, or it's always their whatever. But you need an actual strategy. Like, the game actually requires some strategy as you get up and you play older teams, higher level. So if you're gonna go against one of those high firepower teams, like, is your best move, hey guys, work hard, let's just go shot for shot with these guys? That's probably not a great strategy, but if you guys win 80% of the face-offs, that means you guys start with the puck 80% of the time. It's like, now they're not starting with it. You're taking time away from them now.
Yeah.
There's
and now maybe you could just dump it in, and we'll send 1-3-1 or 1-4, and they're gonna never, like, because actually my Bell Tire team, we went to the Marley tournament, played a team, junior Canadians, and they knew because they scouted us at one of the tournaments, and they knew we were gonna be good. And they hacked and whacked, and our guys got frustrated, and so we were playing 3-2 for first 2 periods, legit the whole time. And I'm like, guys, like, whatever. But they were playing a 1-3, 1-4. It was like a total trap. So I worked around it with the kids and stuff like that, and it took till the third period for us to get 2 goals, 2-0, 2-0. And it was like they were so frustrated. And then that team, we played them again, and they were better every time because they
Yeah, you told me. Yeah, I remember you saying this story.
Yeah, and I think we tied them in one tournament. It was like simply they frustrated the shit out of our guys, and they weren't used to it. So if you can learn how to do that to another team, you give yourself a fighting chance. We were better, no questions, but we were a team that was fast, could move pucks, and it was like all beautiful hockey. But what was missing a little, not totally, but was missing was the heart grind stuff. Winning is too easy. They don't like.
That's what you've never had to sharpen that skill, right?
That's right.
And that's, if there's a weak link to be found with a lot of those good teams, again, in general, because like some teams I'm sure have a lot of heart and grind and whatever, but a lot of those high firepower teams that always win, if you want to find a crack in the armor, a lot of times it's that frustrating game. It's that they're used to going tic-tac-toe through the neutral zone, but now there's 7 people between the blue lines. It's like, that's hard now to make those passes. Even if you're no good, you're just in the way, right? So you're going to break up plays. You're going to disrupt things,
Yeah, you dump it in to go get it, and there's a guy interfering a little bit, just enough to slow you down, and now you're frustrated. I don't have the puck on my stick. And those guys on the bench that haven't been used to like that grindy stuff, they look at each other and they start bitching at each other, right? A lot of the times.
Yeah. So one more question from the coaching side. Actually, this is kind of just for me, actually, more than anyone else, but I'm sure other people will find it helpful. If you get into the situation as the coach where there's just not much else to say, for example, so let's say you guys made your game plan and they're sticking to it to a T and it's 5-0, or they're not sticking to it at all and they're getting blown out, and it's just like, you're, as the coach, you're just like, I don't know what to say to you. Like, I don't know what to say. What's your move, or what's your behavior in that type of situation as the coach? Like, sometimes is it, do you just leave it for today? It's like, you guys aren't having it today, we'll come back tomorrow and try again, or what?
It definitely can be that. It could be a lot of humor. It could be if we're playing whatever, pick the team, and it's usually, like you said, you prepared, you did everything you can. It's 5-0 the first 3 to 5 minutes, whatever it is. You can just sit there and say, "Boys, it's a good team. It's a good team. All you can do is you stick to the plan and work. That's all you can do. That's all you can do. You can't be overly like, that's a good team, man. And maybe it's even, you know what? I didn't plan this one right for you guys. Like it is what it is.
Yeah, that's you know what? That's actually a good point. I didn't think you were going to say that. That's a good point, because you can. That is the moment. That moment is where the coach can like turn on the players and be like, well, you guys didn't do this, that, the other thing. But if you're in the situation where they actually are doing their actual best and they're just getting wrecked, it's like, Jesus. It's like, just Jesus, guys. Yeah. And you can turn it.
And then you can just throw like, I want you to keep plugging here. I'm proud of you for going. This is a good team, boys.
And you know what? That you might get a better reaction from your team where they actually have a little bit more juice and have a little bit more heart with that attitude, as where it's like, boys, like you have nothing to be embarrassed about. Like these guys are just really good. Like let's go out there and just give them hell, boys. Like get in their face, give them hell. And it's like that. That is actually a. I bet you that would be a. I didn't even think of that
Yeah,
as
you
an
teach them
option.
pride. Like, let's just play for pride. Quitters don't quit, or winners don't quit. Like, you use those little phrases and stuff, but like sometimes it's too much. It's like, these are really good. Let's just keep going. Let's keep
Yeah,
going, guys.
yeah, and that's okay. That's okay.
Let's set a goal. Like, I mean, you don't have to say much, but let's try to not get scored on. Let's try to get the puck out of our end. Like, whatever. But I think sometimes you just gotta laugh and say, "Oh my God, I underestimated these guys," or me, right? Like, I didn't do a good job of doing this, guys. This one's on me. It just like makes them feel like, okay, it's not, you're not gonna, not pissed at us.
Yeah, exactly.
We're not just losers.
Yeah, and then the other side of it too is like if you just get real quiet, because I know from working with a lot of players, they say this too, is like it feels like the coach just kind of like quits on us when if we get down, and if you're a team that gets down a lot, now it just feels like your coach is always quitting on you. That's not a good look either. So as the coach, like you have a lot of responsibility in commanding that mindset or how that vibe is in the room. That's kind of your job. So
And if they didn't come out to play that day, that's a different story, right? Then you could, that attitude could come across. But you try, like, you're the adult. You got to try to get the most out of them as you can, and keep them positive and moving and trying and not quitting. Those are the lessons that hockey's all about. Win or lose, win or lose. Like, yeah, that's the thing. I think a lot of times, at every level, I think a lot of times the easiest thing to do as a coach is just to, you know, give it to the to your guys and point everything out. And then sometimes if you really look, you might want to just say, you know what, boys, that one's on me. Or go in the room and you can be pissed, but you got to look at yourself and say, I got out coached. That's a possibility. I believed in this kid when I made a mistake, because we all make mistakes. Coaches aren't perfect, that's for sure.
yeah, I remember because I remember coaching one game and it was like the players just the effort was just not great. And it was there was no teaching to be done. It's just like you guys aren't getting in you're not on the forecheck, you're not in the corners, you're not battling, you're not doing the things. It's like there's nothing for me to say. I don't have anything to say. Like if you don't do that, there's nothing I can say to you guys. And that was my take home message after the game. It was like I'm not mad. I was like I'm not mad. It's just there's nothing for me. I can't say anything to you guys. It's like if you don't go work, then nothing else matters. I can show you whatever you want. There's nothing I can write for you. There's nothing I can draw. There's nothing that's going to help if you guys don't go do that. And I was curious of like maybe if there's a better way to handle that situation, but I don't. In that particular situation, I think that was kind of the right thing to do. But if you're just getting really outclassed with a team, I like that kind of way of handling it, where it's just like, boys, like buckle up, like we're in one here, and make lighter of it than like, are you going to be mad at them because they got smashed by a team that's way better? Like, anything else to say kind of on this kind of playing against a better team sort of dynamic? I think that's all kind of I wanted to touch on a few things that I think are kind of interesting.
Yeah, the only thing is you never know who's going to win. You don't actually know. I know people think like, no, you can't lose to these guys, can't be this. You never know. So play your heart out every game, and that's the beautiful thing about the sport. And the encouraging part is that for the kids that go through the grinder, if you have good habits and you work your ass off, don't think that it doesn't go unseen. It might even take a little longer, but those are the tougher guys, and at the end of the day, you might be the better hockey player. So you got to just play. Something I always tell the kids that I work with is play hard, but make sure you're having a lot of fun. Play for fun. Find a way to have fun in the game. So if you take it too serious all the time, which you should take it serious, but if you take it too serious all the time, sometimes you forget about the fun. And hockey's the greatest game. It's so much fun. You lose the fun, maybe you're not going to play your best. So make sure you have fun.
Yep. Sweet. Okay, that's all we got. See you later.